I'd now like to introduce Dr. Liz Sapey, who is a reader in acute and respiratory medicine within the Institute of Inflammation and Aging at the University of Birmingham. She is also a clinically active medical consultant within the University Hospitals Birmingham NHS Foundation Trust, and she is also the director of Pioneer, which she'll be talking about today and around the work they do with data and patient data. So thank you very much for attending, Dr. Sapey, and over to yourself.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that warm introduction. I work frontline caring for patients with COVID, so can I say how grateful I was for that PPE when it started to arrive in the summer, so thank you. In the common lexicon of the day, I'm going to say, can you see my slide? And I hope you can, but I wanted to talk to you about Pioneer. So Pioneer is an hdr-UK hub that's funded to bring data together in the setting of acute care. And we hope that this is a really important service offer that will enable data to be used more effectively to improve patients' lives. So I'm delighted to be able to speak to you about that today. There we go. So acute care is something that you may not have thought about before because it doesn't fit with rheumatology or respiratory medicine or any of the old ologies that we used to use. But acute care is any unplanned health episode. We have 110 million urgent same-day patient contacts each year in the UK at a cost of £17 billion per year, and the numbers are steadily rising. This is an important area within our health sector. There are known health inequalities with acute care. If you come from a lower socioeconomic group or from a BAME group, you're more likely to rely on the front door of the hospital, the emergency department, for your care needs as opposed to going through standard screening processes. And we know that the acute demand in acute care has a huge impact on the way our hospitals run. For example, if you think about the number of planned operations that get cancelled each year because the beds are filled with acute patients. We know that chronic disease accounts for 2/3 of emergency medical admissions, and 10% of acute presentations are the new diagnosis of a chronic disease, often at a late stage. And in fact, we're still making about 25% of our cancer diagnoses in the emergency departments of hospitals, as opposed to through standard screening. And acute care is a complex health environment because it includes primary care, out of hours primary care, helplines, ambulances, hospitals, and also community care. And I just want to give you this case study really quickly to show the impact that we could have if we were to utilize data more effectively in this. So this is an individual pathway of a patient that I had the pleasure and honour of looking after, who essentially presented to their GP initially with a lower respiratory tract infection, then anemia, then an out of hours urinary tract infection, then to one hospital with sepsis, another GP occurrence with chronic kidney disease, a fall at the hospital where I first met this person, and we were able to diagnose myeloma, which is a rare blood cancer. In fact, all of these are pretty much defining symptoms of myeloma, but because they occurred in different times across different healthcare settings, they weren't pieced together, meaning that there was a diagnostic delay for this person of 8 years. Now, we think if we can bring the data together and use it in innovative ways, we can think about new devices, software prompts, or healthcare AI to help clinicians think more about these complex diagnoses that can be made with data coming together across spaces and times. It will also give us an opportunity to diagnose illness earlier, and we know the earlier you diagnose illness, the more you can do about it. And it also enables us to think about new populations for novel treatments. And a case study of that Pioneer is involved in at the moment is we are looking at, for patients with a rare condition called hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, a rare heart disease, but again with very distinctive symptoms over time that we can pull together, and through that we're already beginning to diagnose people earlier. So what's the challenge with health data in this section? Well, we know that the discovery and development of new medicines or new technologies are dependent on our digital capabilities. We also know that to have impact in this area, you need timely, effective, and ethical access to large-scale health data. And that's important not just regionally, but nationally and globally. And once you've developed your technology, your device, your new treatment, you need to be able to test it effectively and evaluate it either within the real world or within a well-simulated clinical environments, again in near real time. And Pioneer was developed specifically to enable this. So our aims are to improve the care provided in acute settings and to reduce the reliance on acute services by better understanding illness and its precipitants. Our research database is ethically and CAG confidentiality advisory group approved. It's secure, and it also has associated with analytical environments, which I can speak to you about. We are already linking patient data at an individual level across community and hospital healthcare providers. And we have public oversight of data sharing through our innovative model, which includes a data trust committee, which is a group of patient and public members that look at all of the data requests that come to us and provide that public voice. We provide data access under license to NHS, academic, commercial, policy, and third sector organizations. And a key strength, rather than to have to go squirreling for data in different pockets, is that Pioneer holds all of the data within a central repository, which is refreshed near real time, weekly in most cases, with a single data controller and this overarching ethics, which means we can respond very agilely to data requests, which is really important if a company has a novel idea that they want to test quickly to make a go, no-go decision. These slides can be shared afterwards if people would like to look at them. So I'm not going to go through all of the detail, but they're there so you can read them later if you'd like to. But our objectives are to improve care through the ethical use of health data. So our North Star will always be patient and public benefit. And if you can demonstrate that, we'd be delighted to work with you. We bring people together. So not only academic, NHS and patient and clinician communities, but also businesses, policymakers and regulatory bodies to try and make the process of getting a novel product which will help people in a position where we can all benefit from it faster. A main theme is to enhance public trust. That means we are incredibly transparent about the data that we share and how we go about making decisions with data, including telling people about the national data opt-out so that they know they can opt out, but hopefully we can persuade them to stay in. We want to enable data-driven health solutions and then provide to companies data security if they want to share data with us, and also the ability for us to help them with their analytics or to provide an environment where they can do their own analytics. Working with healthcare providers, we also try and improve data quality. And this will be a real issue for people that have worked in this arena before. People may say, I've got 10 million records. And then when you look at them, oh, it's 1 million. And when you look at the records that's usable, oh, it's 10,000. So what we spend a lot of time doing with a large data team is working on the curation piece, the quality, to make sure that if we tell you we've got this many records, they will be of the quality needed for your work. So the kind of data that we have spans all of unplanned illness. That means it's condition and disease inclusive. Putting it bluntly, we don't mind if you've had a heart attack, a stroke, or broken your hip. All of that comes into the arena of acute care. I hope none of that happens to any of you, but all of that comes into the arena of acute care. We focus on the patient in their entirety without a disease or organ-based approach. That means we collect all of the data around that person, including their health conditions, their demography, their ethnicity, their age group, and the preceding health contacts that they've had, and then their onward journey. The data is ageless, so our ethical approvals and CAG approvals enable us to include data from children and adults. And because the majority of our data at the moment is based within the West Midlands, and particularly in Birmingham, we can represent diverse ethnicities, and we can reflect the broad range of socioeconomic groupings, but in Birmingham in particular, there is significant social deprivation, meaning that our data can help tackle some of those real world problems that blight so many of us. You can see that we have an infographic on the right of the picture, which is how we tend to display our data, so that if you're interested in a particular topic, we can pull one of these up for you saying, okay, well, this is sort of what that data looks like. So you can get a feel for what may or may not be useful to you. The data is longitudinal. So the electronic health records that we started using initially go back to the 14th of August, 1999, and has continued since then. So we're very good at looking at trends over time. And that's quite important if you're looking at a chronic disease that may have presented with little symptoms or episodes here and there. Our data set is expanding. We have more than 1.2 million patients' data joining us each year. And as I said before, that's all medical conditions. But the granularity includes the measurements that people have had: blood pressure, pulse, respiratory rate, the treatments prescribed and given, all the blood results, investigations, images that they may have had done, any surgical procedures, and then the outcomes. Did that patient survive? Were they able to carry on living independently? Did they need an escalation in their care? And we've put in some numbers at the bottom of the slide so you can get a feel for the level of data that we've got. Now, I wish that Susie Gallier was here because she is our technical director and is an absolute wizard explaining the infrastructure, but you've got me, a clinician, I'll do my best. But the way that we think about it is that we have a central data haven, a safe haven, that has been built by Ensono, a Microsoft Platinum partner, using Azure, that holds all of our data. And then from that, we can spin out bespoke, trusted research environments, TREs, where we can place a cut of the data that's required for a particular company, NHS, academic organisation, and then the tooling they might need to use that data. Or we can do the analytics for them. So if you like Power BI or you're a Linux person, those can be dropped in so that you have the analytics tool that you need. All of those TREs and the main central data haven has been security reviewed by Kinetic Security and Defence Contractors. They do GDHQ security checks. So they gave us a pretty good thorough check over, which we passed with flying colours, I'm delighted to say. And we can have multiple TREs depending on the number of bodies that want to utilise data within Pioneer. Or we can look at potentially sharing data and sending it externally to partners, depending on the security arrangements that are available with that data. The kind of things we can do is we can offer data as a service. So we can have conversations about data that people might want for their research project, their idea, and that can be as a one-off or as a subscription. We can also offer synthetic data. So real patient data comes with very strict governance rules, as you would expect and as we would all hope for. But synthetic data can mirror real patient data in great depth and can be used to answer similar questions without the same concerns about governance. And we can spin up a synthetic data set for you. We can also link data. If you've got a pot of data and want it linked with what Pioneer has, that can be achieved. We can offer you consultancy as a service, either performing analytics or advising on them, giving you access to patients and end users, clinicians to help you interpret health data, and also help with that regulatory requirement. We can also do data-driven fast screen services. I need 10 of those and 15 of those for a clinical trial. Are they available? You know, are those sorts of patients available within the hospital? Yes, our records show we have 400 of those, so you should be able to get X amount consented to your research study. And we're also looking for community membership where people can really partner with us and become part of this journey. The kind of things that we're able to do is to rapidly make available real-world data and consultancy. We have longitudinal, diverse and representative health data. So it isn't the kind of data you often get from clinical trials, which tend to represent just one facet of disease or one facet of a population. We can offer support both with industry marketing and with grant applications if people are looking to go for grants to improve their funding. And we can provide expert support and documentation codified using standards that you'd expect. Our platform is cutting edge, it's built to industry standard. And we're also looking to bring up workforce skills. So if you've got members of your team that you'd be interested in becoming more familiar with working with health data, we have some internship programs that we'd be delighted to talk to people about. Currently, we're working with 2 interns from the Black Internship Program that hdr-UK are running. So it's all very well to talk about where we are, but what have we done with our data? And I just wanted to fly through some examples of the kind of things we've helped with to see if they hopefully give you a flavour of the kind of thing we can do. So there's been a lot of conversation from David about the impact of COVID. Being a frontline clinician, I certainly had my share of that. I've just come off a 12-hour rota block, which is why my voice is a bit croaky. It's nice to feel that we might be back to some form of normal life soon. But anyway, when COVID hit, it was a new disease, no clinical experience, clinical compass completely off. So Pioneer rapidly started to bring together COVID-related data from admissions for 4 hospitals in the region. And we built this COVID dashboard that you can see. This one's slightly out of date because we've had to suppress some low numbers because of risk of identification. But this was released twice daily to hospitals, which showed them behind the numbers what patients had come through the front door, what intensive care beds were used, what beds were still available, what the staffing levels were, the severity of people coming through. And that was used to help with both strategic planning and day-to-day management of the hospital. We did a weekly COVID heat map, which you can see at the right bottom of the graph, which we fed back to Public Health England West Midlands to show them where there were outbreaks at a time before there was community testing. And we also built into the electronic health system a clerking sheet. So you clerk patients in when they come in, take their medical history, write down your examination findings. And we built in a structured electronic one, which was COVID specific, that also linked to some management advice, given that this was a new area that many people had not faced before, and also that we had clinicians who never worked in frontline services coming back to the workforce to help, so to provide them with the support they need. We also enabled rapid analysis of the data coming through. So we noted that there was an increase in clots in patients that was associated with COVID. That's well recognised now. It was an unrecognised risk at the time. And so we were able to feed that back and help change the electronic prescribing system to take account of that. And we also have done lots of non-COVID related activity, building prescribing algorithms, helping with medical alerts across the hospital, and making sure that risk assessments get turned into active prescribing and administration. And again, you can look through these slides in your own time should you wish to. In terms of working with academic organisations, well, currently we've shared data with 180 researchers so far, and Pioneer's been written into 14 publications since we were open in June 2020. We've helped secure more than £14 million of grant funding, and the most recent award was a multi-morbidity bid with UKRI, with Nottingham leading on, which we're delighted to be working with. And we hope that this will build strong links across academic centres and throughout the UK. In terms of working with industry and business, and I guess this is the most interesting bit for the people on this call, we have done a lot of work with SMEs. I don't know if you've heard about Demand Hub, the Data Enabled Medical Technologies and Devices Hub, funded by ERDF, that's working within the region, but we work very closely with those to help SMEs get access to health data that they need, and then do that sort of hand-holding bit to help with analysis if they require it, or what the end server and service might look like to help build up their product. And there's 3 case studies which I've written down, which I won't go through for time, but which you can read through in your own time if you would like to. And we've also been working with large commercial healthcare companies. And I've given you one case study with a name on there because that's now been, that's had its communications release. And that's a project we're doing with Microsoft in RI to bring together imaging and clinical data to enable rapid prognostication for patients who come in through ACUTE services. But we're also working with other large pharmacy and healthcare consultancy companies, bringing together that data and clinical expertise. And I'll stop there to take questions in the last few moments that I've got. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Liz. I do appreciate you need to disappear in about 5 minutes or so. So if there's anybody on the group who'd like to ask a particular question, I have a whole load of them, which I might really have to restrain myself on. So has anybody got any questions they'd like to ask? Everybody's got their cameras off at the moment, so if you're waving at me, I can't see you. While that's happening, I'm very interested in this idea of the TREs, because one of the queries I've always had is people's willingness to have their data shared and the ability of the NHS to share across institutions and across boundaries. So it is something you seem to have managed. What is the scope for making this TRE structure a standard that's used across more than just UHB?
Yeah, so the TRE that Pioneer holds is across UHB, the University of Birmingham, and all partners, but it's open for anyone to use. You just have to apply for it. And in fact, we can spin up a TRE, even if you don't want to use any of the Pioneer data, as a safe place for data to go to. There's a vast difference between consented and unconsented health data. And most of the de-identified, anonymized health data that's shared as part of Pioneer or with other unconsented programs is that it's unconsented. So there are restraints in terms of who you can share it with and what you can do with it, depending on the level of anonymization you can cope with. That means if you want highly granular data, you need a really in-depth deep dive. The chances of being able to re-identify people are slightly higher, even if you do apply sort of standard techniques. And so that means that data set would have to be put somewhere extremely secure in order to make sure that it wasn't leaked or used without the appropriate permissions around it. The lovely thing about a TRE is data doesn't have to go anywhere necessarily. So the data is within our safe haven. We cut it, we place it in the TRE, and then sitting in the TRE, the researchers come to us, not physically, of course, which probably takes a while at the moment, but they come to that TRE through a 3-factor authentication process, through a specific firewall, and we will put into that TRE the kind of tools that you need. Now, TREs can be huge. The one we're building with Microsoft currently is due to house millions of images. So that's a massive one. But at the same time, we can throw a really tiny one that only has a small amount of data in it. Alternatively, if companies don't feel they have the confidence to get the best out of that data, Pioneer can do the analysis with you. What we tend to do is we partner somebody that wants to use data with a clinical expert in the field that they're interested in, because data is just noise without that expertise. And then they work through, actually, what do you need to get out of this data? And can you do that kind of analytics? Or would it just be easier for you if we did it as a service with our in-house analysts? And of course, the team that we've got within UHB includes 60 informaticians, including PhD level and postdoctoral level statisticians. So there's a huge range of expertise that we can partner up with.
And that can be provided as a service in a business context. So it's not it doesn't require a long-term study. I could pitch up as an SME and say, I need data from 50 patients about this, or the incidence of myocardial infarction or whatever. Yeah. And that can be turned around in a time frame that suits a company, not necessarily a university, because they tend to be quite different.
Yeah, they do indeed. So I'll talk you very briefly through our process. I do have to go in 3 minutes.
I'm sorry.
But so essentially, we have a form that's available on our website, which is pioneerdatahub.co.uk. Once that's filled in, and we will help you fill it in, so don't worry about that. It then, when you're ready and you feel you know the data that you require, it then goes through our data trust committee, this group of patient and public members who are our public conscience and our voice over the benefits of sharing data versus the risks. And they are, they've really helped us understand what the public feel comfortable with and what they don't. They meet every 2 weeks, and we aim for a week after that to have the data agreed, and then it's just a question of the data license. So it's how quickly that SME can work with our contracting team to get the data license in. But the data's already there. It's pre-prepared. It's just cutting it. It's like taking a birthday cake out and cutting a slice. That bit isn't difficult. The bit that takes the time is often the contracts.
I can imagine.
We have a draft that we can share right at the start.
That sounds fantastic. It is now 43, so you need to disappear, Liz. I'm sure there will be other questions. What we'll do is, when we circulate the slides, we'll invite people to, if they have any questions, that we'll send them through to you, get some answers. I think it's an absolutely fascinating, Liz. Thank you so much indeed, and thank you for all your work on the front line of COVID over the last 14 months. I fear you're not quite through it yet, but you're getting there.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, Liz.
We've still got Derek on the call, and I think Derek's a bit of an oracle on this type of thing. I have a question actually, Derek, which is, given that Demand Hub is ERDF funded and Pioneer is hdr-UK funded, is there an issue around sustainability here? So how is that going to be maintained when those funding runs out?
That is a really good question, Paddy.
Sorry.
At this precise moment, I can't give you a particularly informative answer, other than to say that there are obviously funding mechanisms coming through, which will be replacing the ERDF funding parts. So ultimately, as soon as we get some information on that that's a bit more concrete, then clearly we'll be able to feed that back into the group here.
I had a question, Paddy, if I can ask. Derek, you might be able to answer. And I think it was great to hear Liz mention ethics there as well. And I was thinking in my head, if Pioneer makes available clean data to an SME, who then does something, you know, amazing with it and develops a new innovation, which could be quite profitable. How does that work then? Is there an incentive of some of that profit or IP to come back? Because ultimately, who does the data belong to? Does it belong to the patients or does it belong to Pioneer? That's the question I had.
Sorry, Ravi, was that to me?
Yeah,
I just
anybody.
I got the back end. I just missed the first part. I do apologise. It broke up the signal.
But basically, who owns any IP developed from data shared with SMEs?
Okay, I got you. With regards to the ERDF projects, any IP that's generated as a result is we can't hold. That belongs to the company. Good. That is all. They've, you know, it's their idea, and it may have been generated through the course of discussion or development of their project or service or whatever they're involved in. If they want to take it further, that IP, then of course there is the opportunity to work, you know, alongside the university, and the university may take an interest in the IP, and use that as part of the part payment, if you like, of working alongside each other. But to all intents and purposes, and for what I do within Demand Hub, no, IP remains entirely with the organisation in question.
That's good news.
So fear not.
Are there any more questions from those on the call? Apologies that I disappeared there for a minute. All the stuff on the radio today about us all getting a gigabit service, so I could do with 1G just at the minute. So I'm sorry I fell off there. So I don't think we've got any more questions from around the group. Have you got anything else you'd like to add, David?
Yeah, if I may, there's a couple of things. The first one is that last week we did a spring roadshow where the D in focus was digital health. And today, as you can tell, the D in focus is data. And what's very clear for those of us who participated in both of the roadshows is how interlinked they are. And we know from our conversations that there's a lot of interest amongst people who have ideas for digital health services and products, that the data is critical to them. And so it was really reassuring today to listen to Liz and know that there is a facility that we can offer. And we all stay very close on that in order to be able to see that develops in the ways that will be most helpful to businesses in the region.
What was interesting last week, we had a company who had actually who had developed this type of service. So they were providing curated data services. So it was a different way of looking at it. Yeah. But we have a resource here that's publicly funded.
That's right. And I noticed in the chat there was a question to us as a cluster about open data, and we've said that we support open data, so we've given our answer to that one. And I think that's probably the end of answering people's questions, and I think it's going to be possible for us to finish a little bit early. But yeah, the thing I'd like to say to everybody is thank you very much for attending. I can tell from the comments in the chat function that Liz's presentation has been very, very informative, and she was such a clear speaker. I think she presented so well, it made it very easy to follow. And of course, our message that I want to leave in everybody's mind as the last one they pick up before they go away from this meeting is that we need members, and we need people to join and hand over their money for us to be sustainable. And if that's the one thing people can take away with you today, and think in your contacts, if there's anybody you can put us in touch with, we would like that very much.
I will have one final plug for the next D. That is next week, is diagnostics, same time, same place, 11 o'clock next Friday. We're going to, and we've got speakers from the University of Warwick and from Linear Diagnostics, and also there'll be the launch of the DIACOM project, which is this combined authority funded initiative to create a mini cluster around diagnostics companies. So that should be a an interesting event. So I will wrap up then. Thank you, everybody. Can I just reiterate what David said? Thank you ever so much for coming along. We have a select audience these days, but thankfully Ravi is looking after all of the technology. Everything will be recorded and will be available on YouTube channel. So there's an opportunity to watch again. And if you think that you have colleagues who might be interested in it who couldn't attend today, please feel free to share the link.